Yo, what's up guys, TheInsaneGamefreak here. You probably saw the title and now you're all paranoid like what the fuck is going on. And for those who are new to my channel, you may look at this video and go, you're a hater and all this other shit. First off, anybody who's seen my channel, watch my Pokemon related videos, you know I love it, Pokemon X and Y. But there are a few things about the game that have been legitimate criticisms about it. And I feel like it's a lot more apparent with this title than it has been with the other title. And what am I talking about? There are people who enjoy the game but hate the game. And particularly those people in question are the people who are either been fans of the series since the beginning or are more used to more challenging games. The biggest thing with X and Y is obviously that besides the transition to 3D, is taking previously conceived elements in the Pokemon franchise and translating them to 3D to make sure they would work in 3D. And not everything works, but most things work. But because they were my personal belief is that because they spent all that time worrying about just trying to make a good transition so people didn't end up hating the first 3D title in the series, they ended up taking out something that is pretty prevalent in like every other game. Granted, it's been shown to be getting, I guess you could say what started this was probably somewhere around Gen 4. Gen 4, maybe Gen 5 is when it really started. And what am I talking about? One of the biggest complaints to any hardcore Pokemon fan about this game is that it's too fucking easy. And it is too easy. And people wouldn't, most people don't complain about easiness. Not to that extent, but when Pokemon is one of the few RPG series that doesn't have a difficulty setting, and the game is this easy, I think I've said it before, X and Y, Gen 6 in general, is like the easiest generation. As much as people don't really want to admit it, Pokemon as a franchise is not as easy as fuck as people like to say it is. The older games would give you a challenge. Gen 6 is a fucking joke when it comes to challenge. Even the fucking champion in question is a joke. If you even struggle with any of the Pokemon in this generation, it wasn't because they were legitimately hard and they were using interesting strategies. It was because you didn't know the Pokemon types and they frustrated the shit out of you because it took you a while to figure out what their types were. For example, when I was complaining about Honchula, fighting flying is not a type that I'm used to, so it took me a while to figure out what the fuck am I supposed to do with this thing. And most of the Pokemon I ever lost to him was purely because I didn't know what his typing was, or his variety in his moveset, or his abilities. Because I didn't look up every nature and ability, well not nature, every ability of every new Pokemon in Gen 6. I wanted to have some fun with the game. But here's my thing. I think Gen 6 is the worst it should ever get when it comes to challenge. Because Gen 6 is that game that teeters on being too easy. And it's still easy as fuck in general, but this game teeters on being way too fucking easy. If you wanted my opinion on which are the hardest games in the series, it probably would be I'd probably say anything, probably Gen 3 and back, I think are the hardest games in the series. And particularly because Gen 3 actually had Gen 3, Gen 2, and Gen 1 legitimately had hard gym leaders and hard-ass Elite Fours and champions to make shit challenging. Gen 4 wasn't really hard, just kind of tedious. Gen 5 wasn't really hard at all. And Gen 6 is a fucking joke. Honestly, I think Gen 5 should have been the easiest it ever got, because Gen 6 borders that line of being so easy that you don't want to fucking touch it again. And see, as much as people want to call out how Pokemon loses the generation of its fans with its anime, Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Do that with the games. Just saying. They never make the games so overly complicated to the point where older fans don't give a shit. And I'm not saying there aren't older fans in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Digimon that don't still do other things besides watch the anime. I'm just saying things got so convoluted and complicated, nobody bothered. Obviously, because the Pokemon series, in terms of games and pretty much every iteration of the Pokemon franchise, has done better than any iteration of the Digimon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchises. And that's simply because Pokemon remains simple, but can add little subtle changes to it to make it more interesting. And when I'm asking this question, do you think it sucks? Do you think it sucks from a challenge perspective or as a general thing? Because most people who don't necessarily say it's the best game ever are usually talking from a difficulty perspective. This game is way too easy. They give you Pokemon like no thing. They give you HMs like no thing. And I understand that part of the challenge, some of the annoying shit about the older gens is, for one, you had too many HMs, or you had to do a whole bunch of other random shit to get those HMs or TMs or ways to progress, and people didn't want to fucking do that. I think Gen 3 and Gen 4 are the biggest offenders in HM department because the shit was ridiculous. Defog, like 3 or 4 water HMs, like what the fuck? But my main question is more so, what do you want them to change? I want them to get to at least around Gen 4, Gen 3 difficulty. Not saying it has to be inherently hard, but I shouldn't feel like I'm on a cakewalk. Because as I said, one of the things I kind of hope they do is they just stop worrying about adding new Pokemon and just create new regions and new gym leaders. They can focus on the challenge and the story and make it more interesting. I understand part of the joy of Pokemon is the new Pokemon in general. And each generation has Pokemon we love. I don't think you can go through each generation and say you don't like any of the Pokemon in one particular generation. That's rare as fuck. But my point is, is that it's gonna turn into the other franchises if you keep trying to add things on. I understand it's gaming. You have the ability to make unlimited amounts of shit, but Gen 6 should have been an obvious warning that it's like, yo, you're obviously starting to run out of ideas because this was the least amount of new Pokemon we've had in a Pokemon game. To the point where this game was more full of older Pokemon than new Pokemon. I feel like you should start expanding more options in the metagame and making the game challenging. You've streamlined everything. So boost up the challenge to adjust for the streamlinedness. It's like you've streamlined the shit out of the game. That's part of the reason why Pokemon was so... But see, that's the type of hardness people don't like. People don't like their games to be too hard based around because the mechanics were just not done well enough. They want their games to be hard or challenging through the actual challenge of the game and not because the mechanics of the game aren't done well. You streamlined everything, meaning people have no reason not to do some of this shit. So, with that being stated and everything streamlined in terms of the base mechanics of the game, the gym leaders and the trainers you fight should be at a higher level to adjust to that challenge. Because if your true challenge level was at level 8, and it was at level like 5 or 4 due to the game's broken mechanics, and now that the mechanics are fixed, you're at 8, the trainer shouldn't still be at fucking 4 or 5. They should be at like 8, 9, or 10. That's the whole point. Yeah, I understand people don't want games that are too hard, but Pokemon games have never been like insanely hard. Most of the frustration that comes from Pokemon titles come from stupid shit like the HMs, which I think is the only thing in the franchise they still need to streamline. That shit needs to go or become a subsection. You take out the element of exploration when you give me HMs that suck, and you give me HMs that I would normally not put on my Pokemon, and plus the fact that you can't remove or replace them makes it even more frustrating. There is no leeway with HMs. Like, listen, fuck tradition. If it's hurting my gaming experience, I don't want it. That's what I'm trying to say. The next generation, or just the next games in the franchise, need to be to a challenging level, because if it's the same easiness, I'll beat it but have really no attachment to the game. Which kind of happened with Gen 6, where none of the gym leaders are inherently interesting, none of the Elite Four are inherently interesting. They have cool designs and they seem like the only way I'm expecting to enjoy most of these gym leaders would be through the anime. Granted, you can make that argument for every gym leader iteration, except for maybe Gen 5. Gen 5 actually gave you interesting gym leaders overall. That's why I said you need to continue what you did with Gen 5, because it's like once you streamline the game to the point where it's easy as shit, you gotta boost everything else up or else it's just gonna be uninteresting. I'm like playing the same game that's easy as fuck, and you give me this boring story with these boring characters, and I'm like, well, eventually Pokemon's gonna get really fucking boring. You could get away with doing that because the game mechanics were so interesting and challenging. You took the challenge out of the metagame for the most part, so it's like, it's so easy and streamlined now. If the next title is as basic as this, you're gonna find it boring. Like, this is the point in which Pokemon's gonna have to make that transition, not just, okay, look, we got the 3D. We now need to make the true transition to being a real 3D RPG. The challenge, the story, all of that. Because trying to stick to the same fucking line of, oh, you know, trying to stick to the same line that we've been doing since Gen 1 isn't going to cut it as much anymore. And Gen 7 may end up being boring because of it. And I really hope that doesn't happen. Then again, when we inevitably have that third game that we're probably going to get, or at least a variation of Gen 6, that will be part of the test of it. We'll see the true test later. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but the Pokemon, you know, Pokemon X and Y sucking, I can see why. This shit can go really bad really quick if they don't know what to do. But that's just my thing. Please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. This has been the Insane Game Freak. Launch the game, play to win, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace! Oh.